Afternoon all, Dave Freezer here alongside Paddy Davitt, not long back from Colney. We've been having a chat with Daniel Farker and James Maddison ahead of tomorrow's trip to Nottingham Forest, which is looking like it's going to be a pretty tough encounter, isn't it, Pad?
Yeah, for many reasons, mate. Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll get into it. Very depleted amount of midfield options available. That's not a good factor to overcome. Secondly, obviously on the back of four games without a win, 3 of those in the league. No, actually it is 4 in the league, isn't it? Bolton, Wolves,
3 losses
Derby,
in the bounce,
yeah. So, you know, the lack of confidence is there for all to see. We saw it. Anybody who was there Saturday against Barnsley, pretty graphic evidence of it. So I think there's been a bit of soul searching the last 2 days, and but all in all, you combine injury problems with not the best of form. Against the Forest team, we've won 3 at home on the spin, including Sheffield United. Yeah, it feels like it could be quite a big test from tomorrow night.
Yeah, to be fair, Daniel was still fairly upbeat, wasn't he? But let's get stuck into the team news. Tom Tribal was the one that we were sort of all waiting for mainly, wasn't he? And not good news.
No, not good news. No, initially the head coach thought it was the hip area. It's actually his lower back, but been scanned, they've looked at it, and you're talking, I think he said 7 to 10 days, so that you think would rule him out entirely this week, and it'd be week after, wouldn't it? Which is Cardiff, is it?
Yeah, he said there was a slight chance for Preston, didn't he? But
he didn't sound overly optimistic.
No.
So that's on top of no Tete, on top of Pritchard, albeit Pritchard should get a run out with the 23s at Wolves tonight, so that's a step in the right direction, but yeah, and then you throw in obviously Jarvis and Louis Thompson, and you can see why they're looking very depleted, which is a major concern obviously for tomorrow night.
Yeah. Hello, John. Yeah, good morning from, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Boys in Idaho. So there we go. That's I'm afraid I can't pronounce your last name very well
Boise,
either, John.
I think that's Boise.
Boise, is it? Yeah,
I think it is.
John Misages? That doesn't sound right to me, but I'm sure you can correct me. Comment from John here. Do you expect the club to target new signings for the January window? Do you think Husband will continue to see playing time? Well, we can answer that one. He's banned for tomorrow night because he got his 5th yellow card on Saturday. I'm not quite sure how he's managed that, considering he hasn't played full time. But he's banned. But he is looking like he's set to miss a couple of weeks, wasn't it?
Groin,
yeah,
mate.
groin.
Yeah. So let's be brutally honest. I don't think there's been too many Norwich fans who'll be overly concerned about that.
Not based on his first half performance Saturday. That was well, the last 2 games have been a bit of a step backwards, really, haven't they?
It has, although in his defence, no pun intended, Josh Murphy in front of him, it's not working, is it? I mean, that flank has been exposed too often. I think Wolves certainly did a number on them down the left-hand side, and Barnsley as well. We're getting a lot of joy. It's not quite working. That there's a lot of areas of this team at the minute that don't feel as if they're clicking, and that's certainly for me, the left-hand side. Defensively is no. So I mean, Stiepermann will come in tomorrow night, we assume, and I'll go back to Sheffield United away where he played there, and I thought he looked quite solid. He's spoken to us, hasn't he, how he likes that role, because the way Norwich want to play, the fullbacks have a bit of freedom to get forward, so he likes that element to it. But physically as well, I think he's not going to get as dominated as a Husband. So I don't think that weakens him any tomorrow night.
Well, Mark Newstead here says back 3 with wing backs for tomorrow, or a shock 4-4-2, given we have limited options. I mean, I think we probably will see 3 at the back, won't we? It seems to suit Stiepermann and Pinto.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Daniel hasn't got a great deal of options, really. Harrison Reed is the only proper central midfielder available. Without Alex Tete and Tribal, I would have liked to have seen Stiepermann perhaps tried alongside Reed in a 4-2-3-1, giving you a bit of defensive strength. But I think it's going to have to be Stiepermann left and Reed does his best in the middle.
Well, Reed will have to anchor it, won't he, ultimately? And then, if you've got your 2 wing-backs, then you can still slot another 3 in front, can't you? So Maddison will play. We've spoken to him today, and he still feels, although I'm not sure that the fatigue factor isn't an element, he does look a bit weary to me at the minute.
He insists the otherwise, doesn't he?
Yeah, as if like that's putting mileage in his legs and he's going to be stronger for it, which is good to hear. It's a great attitude. But he does look a bit weary, as if he's carrying a lot of the burden there. And I can't. We'll probably get into the Vrancic topic, but wouldn't at all be surprising to see him come out and Wes come in, because Wes didn't feature obviously the weekend, and with Wes it's now clearly a management issue in terms of his body and not getting any younger. So if he didn't feature on Saturday and that midfield didn't function, you would think he would come in for Forest, particularly by all accounts. You flagged it up, Forest a passing side, like to dominate the ball, maybe even to a more marked degree than Norwich. So that tells you that there might be a bit more time for Norwich's creative players on the ball. So, yeah, I think it's set up for Wes tomorrow night for me. Yeah,
they are one of the only teams in the division who average a higher possession and higher pass completion rate. So, I mean, that probably points towards a fairly technical game tomorrow night. And, yeah, Maddison's touch just wasn't quite there on Saturday.
Which he admitted himself, didn't he?
Yeah,
he's
he
very
was very
self-critical.
honest.
He watches every game back, obviously with a focus on his own performance. And I put it to him on the back of what Daniel Farke was saying on Saturday, that the tempo was too slow, they wasn't moving the ball quick enough, and that clearly, a lot of that comes through your midfield, particularly the way Farke wants to play. And fair play to James, he basically said, yeah, having watched it back, there's 2 or 3 occasions he's took an extra touch, and it slows down the attacks. So they're well aware of it, but we just need to see that translate into whatever work they're doing on the training pitch, into actual games, because it's far too predictable, far too laboured, the build-up at the minute, and teams are playing them far too easily. It's just predictable, basically, and the Norwich needs to change it up.
He said that the Barnsley draw felt like a defeat, wasn't it? Didn't he? So that's fair play to him for admitting that. Jez Arlo, Pritchard close to being back is a massive positive. There was that side of things. We sort of heard this on Friday from Daniel, that Alex Pritchard might feature for the under-23s tonight. They are away at Wolves in Premier League 2. He has travelled. Russell Martin's also there. Daniel would have liked Stephen Naismith to play, but he's still not quite fit enough to feature, is he? So presumably that rules Russell Martin out of being on the bench, you would have thought, at Forest tomorrow as well.
Yeah. But basically he confirmed later on in the presser that young Cantwell has been added. He won't feature tonight for Wolves, so he's clearly going to go with them to Forest. But yeah, Naismith is doubly frustrating for all concerned, because with the resources so depleted in that area of the pitch now, he would, he'd definitely be getting a chance. And if it's not an opportunity for him to play at the minute, it's difficult to see when Pritchard comes back, when Tete comes back, in a matter of weeks, where he would fit into the mix, I think.
Okay. The next comment I was going to go for was Richard Sherwood. Why didn't Houlihan come on in the second half on Saturday? Christoph Zimmerman came on at half time. That was a change in shape. Wilskett and Watkins. So that was changing wide players, wasn't it? I mean, I'm still not having Yannick Wilskett at the moment, I'm afraid. Getting just head down and running isn't working for me. I think he needs to up his game quite significantly. But it's interesting with Wes. We've not seen him hit his straps this season, have we?
No, not compared to, I remember the start of last season. It was almost like it was the Indian summer. He was so influential.
Yeah.
But even last season, I think from that initial maybe 2-3 months in, a bit like the team, obviously this time last year they were really toiling, weren't they? Long run of games without a win. I think it was 2 in 11, around something like that. And he obviously suffered as a result. And I didn't feel the second part of the season he really put his stamp on it. And it's continued in that vein, really. Now, clearly, the emergence of Maddison would have pushed him down the pecking order a little bit. And obviously when Pritchard is available, then that would further limit him, you think. But for the here and now, as I say, ultimately, are you going to get less from him than you're getting from Vrancic? I don't think you would. So for me personally, out of those two, I would always rather see Wes, as long as you manage his load, and he clearly hasn't been overworked of late. I mean, Ireland, he went away with over the international break, but I think he came on the second half in the second leg, didn't he? But it wasn't like he was flogged playing for his country. So
didn't even see much of the ball when he came on, I don't think.
Bolton, he played there, didn't he, prior to the international break? Yeah, but other than that, if you were to go back over the last month or so, I don't think he's been overworked. So I would personally prefer to see him tomorrow night than Vrancic.
And I got a few tweets after the press conference as well, people saying, well, the thing is with Wes, as we've always known throughout his Norwich career, is you've got to play him central, you've got to play in the number 10 role, and to be fair, because of Maddison, he's had to sort of squeeze into wide areas almost, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, and that's why, going back to what we said, if we think they're going to go with a 3 tomorrow and 2 wing-backs, then there's potential scope there that you could play him and Maddison in a more central area, as long as Reid was very disciplined and that protective role, because as we saw on Saturday when they kind of went to a 3, when they get caught the wrong side, that the central defenders or the central 3, they look so sort of exposed and tribal. Okay, they'll miss certain aspects of him not being there tomorrow, but I think it's safe to say without the ball and not having Tete alongside him, he's looked very weak for me.
And slow.
He doesn't have the pace. Yeah, he doesn't have the pace. When he gets caught the wrong side, it's a major concern because it does expose the back 3, and ultimately that's how Barnsley scored their equaliser on Saturday. So,
yeah, should have put his foot in, shouldn't he?
Yeah, but the reality is, and we know this already, we said this on the way down to the presser today, that Norwich's best spell this season, if you break it down into 3 blocks, it's basically before Tete got in the side and it was while Tete was on the side and now he's out of the team. It's really literally it's bookended by the period of the season when Alex Tete was in the side, and it's not too much of a stretch to say that's how important he is to this team. Tribal looked a completely different player. It released Maddison a bit more to go and do what he needed to do. Defensively, there was a bit more protection there. He's such a key player, and there isn't another player like him. Reed isn't the same type of player. Tribal doesn't offer you that, so kind of does expose a bit of a weakness in the squad. Albeit maybe Godfrey is the man, but as we speak, he's away doing his stuff with Shrewsbury, isn't he? So
yeah,
maybe in the new year, maybe that might change in the new year.
Yeah, get well soon, Alex. I'm sure most people would like to see him at least back as an available option. Duo U suggests whether Maddison could drop back and play alongside Reed if they were going to play 2 central. I mean, he's capable of it, isn't he? I'd rather he did that than Vrancic because he's more likely to put his foot in, but it just seems a bit of a waste of him, doesn't it?
I 100% agree. I think that he needs to be nearer the opposition goal as possible because he does have a little trick. His delivery is excellent, and he's got that imagination. I don't think I'd personally want to see him pushed further down back towards his own goal. I don't think you get the most out of him. That's almost square pegs in round holes for me.
Yeah. Stuart Cousins, is Naismith the man to turn the season around? He's a proven goal scorer and should play. I mean, he's going to have to get fit first. By the sounds of what Daniel said today, they want him to get some minutes with the under-23s. But the whole time he's been out, Daniel has spoken about him in fairly glowing terms in terms of him being an experienced player and somebody that could influence things. I mean, we've never really seen him play as an out-and-out striker, oddly, since he's come from Everton, have we? So do you think he's a player that could have a big impact, or as maybe his better days gone? Yeah,
I don't know. It's hard to. I mean, we all know about the pedigree of the player that they signed, but it's safe to say, bar the odd cameo, we've not really seen that on a consistent basis. So you would feel probably not. I mean, for me, the one is, and it's stating the obvious, is Alex Pritchard. If they get Alex Pritchard in the vein of form he was in when Alan Irvine gave him a 10-game shot at the back end of last season. I mean, he was as good as anything in the Championship. And Farker said that today when I pressed him on because of the midfield situation. How big is the temptation to almost fast-track him back in? And he says, yeah, it's huge because, he said himself, in that position, probably there isn't a better player in the Championship. And because Norwich are struggling creatively across midfield, you can understand why he might be keen to. But as he rightly said, I'd rather have him back at the start of January fit and firing and then there's 20-odd games to go than risk him now when he's 70-80% and he breaks down again. So you can understand the dilemma, but I would hope that we would start seeing him in the first team mix, maybe Cardiff onwards.
Daniel almost allowed himself a little naughty moment today, didn't he? Said even head coaches have to resist temptation sometimes. So, he clearly wants to get Alex Pritchard back in the team. Sue Cassidy, playing from the back, yes or no? Well, I think as far as Daniel Farker's concerned, that is the way to do it. Angus Gunn is comfortable with it, Tim Closer with it within reason, and I don't think that's, there's not been too many sort of catastrophic moments from playing out from the back, have they? It's been more by the time they get it to that front third where they're not doing enough. There's not enough movement, not enough sharp passing, almost, as Daniel put it after the game on Saturday, not enough risk taking.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, he said force it rather than expect it to happen, but both in terms of during the game and in terms of getting a result. Ultimately, you get yourself 1-0 up fortuitously, Josh Murphy, and why they couldn't then get a little shot of confidence. They're in front at home, which is a very rare occurrence from this season. Go on and win that game comfortably. It was almost, they went back into their shell. There's a little bit too much of the painting by numbers for me. We all know how he wants to play dominating possession, being very good across midfield, and basically picking their way through opposition defences. But the reality is we're not seeing that. What we're seeing is this, repeating myself, laborious, slow incremental progression to the opposition penalty box, by which time they've got so many numbers back. It's literally a case of we'll wait, the intricacy will break down, and then we'll attack them and we'll expose them with pace on the counter. They need to shake it up. They do need to move the ball quicker. They need a quicker tempo. They also need to get men quicker around Nelson Oliveira as it is, Cameron Jome as it has been, because there's a lot of flack flying in the direction of the forward players, and rightly so. The goal output isn't sufficient, but it's very difficult. You saw again Saturday, Nelson Oliveira, at times he's basically just running side to side, trying to occupy 2 and 3 defenders. The balance it's not right at the minute, and it's almost like pieces of the jigsaw. I'm sure once one or two slot into place, and whether that's new personnel or whether that's just moving it quicker in a higher tempo, but at the minute it just feels like it's not right, it's not clicking. And we can see that, supporters can see that, and the players themselves will know that. They know they're not playing as well as they're capable of playing. And Maddison himself said it could just be one result. It could be going to Forest tomorrow night, winning a game in a nice fashion, and then the confidence comes back and the belief comes back, and we see more of the Norwich we saw in that run of 10 games. But even then, you wouldn't say they were putting teams to the sword. During that run, they were grinding out results. So I don't think there's been really a phase this season where, conversely, with last season, as much as it ended in disappointment, there was games, Forest being one of them, where they really put teams away, just blew them away. They were just too good for them, too much attacking power. We haven't seen that from a Daniel Farke team yet, so maybe Pritchard is the key to it all. Putting him back into the mix, I think that would relieve a bit of the pressure on Maddison, which would be no bad thing. And you can guarantee if you're Nelson Oliveira and you're in a team with Alex Pritchard, you're going to get some decent chances during the game.
Absolutely. As we've written before, all their wins this season have strangely come when they've had less of the possession, which is quite a strange stat. Oliveira was quite a strange performance on Saturday, wasn't it? I think most people will probably let him off, because he was a bit rusty. He's just coming back from injury, but to have those sort of wayward shots or wild shots as he did, I think on that occasion you could almost let him off. And I saw a few comments from people saying if Jerome was doing that, he'd get absolutely slaughtered, and that's probably a fair point. So hopefully Nelson can pick up the pace. This is probably an apt time to bring in the comments about Mario Vrancic. From what you were saying there about the slow build-up play around the box, when I'm watching it, it reminds me of when Arsenal are at their worst and they just play it around the box and their fans get frustrated because they're not actually taking that chance and trying to create something. And obviously it's different calibre, but on Saturday I said that Mario Vrancic reminds me a bit of Mesut Ozil. Different quality level again, but he has got that laid-back style. When he hasn't got the ball, he doesn't look particularly urgent, and we spoke to Daniel about that today, didn't we? About whether he feels Mario is struggling to get up to speed in the Championship, and he was pretty good on it, wasn't he? He was pretty honest and said, I've spoken to Mario a lot about this, and he wants to be playing better, but it was clear he's got a lot of faith in him, that he's going to keep trusting him, and the word he said is that he's capable of being a special player. Well, he's
again, a little bit like Norwich. As a collective, you've seen flashes of it, you've seen glimpses of it. I think Brentford in the League Cup, that slip pass at Carrow Road early in the season, was it QPR?
QPR, yeah.
That's a real moments of quality, and he's got that ability. But I'm afraid he's not influencing games to the degree he needs to. And again, my timeline is full of he's a passenger. Basically when Norwich don't have the ball, what is he contributing? Because of the type of player he is, which is a more technically creative type of player, he's not going to put his foot in. Which again, we're going back to the Alex Tetty debate. What type of midfielder do you need? Ultimately, you need a mix across your midfield, and I think Farke, by his own admission, probably admitted they got it wrong on Saturday. When you've got a midfield of Tribal, Maddison, Vrancic particularly, and then you add in Murphy and Steeperman to a lesser extent, there isn't a lot of devil there when they don't have the ball, and I'm afraid in the Championship that is a given. You need to have that in your armoury as well. You can't, and this is where they went wrong, didn't they? Early part of the season, they basically thought they could put teams away just through the weight of their possession and the quality of their possession. They were a rude awakening, culminating in the Millwall debacle. So
particularly for Vrancic that day as well.
Yeah, it almost feels like they've kind of, again, possibly through necessity, because they've got certain individuals who are missing, who offer them a bit different, that we're now finding ourselves back towards where they were at the start of the season, which was we'll just pass away, and then we'll eventually break down a team. And the reality is that they're not having enough guile or invention to do it, and then they concede, and then then that they're not going to have enough in them to get a result. So it does feel a little bit back to the future at the minute. And how long do you give Vrancic? Ultimately, he's getting plenty of chances. The manager says he's showing faith in him, and he thinks he will prove what he's all about. But I think if you were to take a straw poll of most Norwich fans now, they don't really want him in the side, do they? Because all they're seeing is what he doesn't offer rather than what he might potentially offer. And I think it's, at this stage of the season, we need a bit more than potential.
It's interesting to see where Vrancic's career goes, but it seems pretty clear that Daniel's going to stick with him for now. Let's get through a few more of your comments. Barry Dale, too many square pegs in round holes. Steepman's left-footed and should be playing on the left. Yeah, I mean, he got on with playing on the right as best he could, didn't he, on Saturday, but wasn't really ideal. John Miazurges, yeah, that's how I'm going to go with it. Is Matt Jarvis still part of this squad? Do we expect him back anytime soon? No, he's not this year. Asked Daniel about him on Friday. Him and Louis Thompson both still long term. I don't think there's really a sort of definitive time for when those two could be back, if at all.
I was told February, March for Jarvis, so unless he's ahead of schedule, I wouldn't think you'd see him before the next international break.
And I mean, he's going to need minimum under 23s football. You would have thought ideally alone. He's still got 18 months left on his contract yet as well, so interesting to see what happens with Matt Jarvis, but as we said before, he doesn't want to be injured, so he's probably one just to put on the back burner for now. Who have we got here? Darren James Hoggart. Norwich do not appear technically good enough to play the system Farcup wants them to play, therefore why play it? And Kellen Noble, do you think Farcup will play both Maddison and Pritchard together or opt for just one of them? Well, that'll be a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
So maybe we can park that for not too long, but I wouldn't have thought Pritchard's going to be involved absolute earliest of on the bench at Cardiff, so maybe we'll revisit that then. But Darren's comment there, are the players technically good enough to play the system Farker wants? I mean, there's plenty of ability there, isn't there? But you've got to have a mix.
Who are the best side we've seen this season Norwich play? It's Wolves, isn't it? And they had the technical elements. Players like Neves. Costa. They kept him in the bench until they brought him back in. The lad up front who's scoring plenty of goals, Bonatini, big lad, but technically you could see he's a good player. But they also had some proper units across the midfield area as well. So for me, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like, do we just go with all the technical players? Do we just go with lads all roll their sleeves up metaphorically and put their foot in? I think in a championship you're going to need a mix of everything, because week to week, Saturday to Tuesday, you face different tests. Going to Burton away is different to maybe Fulham at home, isn't it? So, when Norwich, if you go back 2 years, the Alex Neil team who came back up 14-15, they had the Wes Hulans, but they also had the Bradley Johnsons. They had a bit of Nathan Redmond, but they had an Alex Tete. They had enough tools in their armoury to go anywhere and play any style of football. At the minute, it seems a bit too rigid for me. Again, with the caveat of the injuries and the unavailabilities, but there's a little bit of the philosophical wedded to we must play this type of way, and it isn't working. And they don't have a plan B or C, in my opinion. So, and opposition teams will know that. You see the sound bites from rival managers. Well, we knew Norwich would have a lot of the ball, but we felt they were vulnerable if we could, turn them over quickly and counter with pace, and that is the problem. Norwich are a little bit too easy to work out at the minute, and credit to Farker and his coaching staff. That was the case up to Millwall. They changed it. Tete came back in. They went with a 2 in front of the back 4, and then they, for me, were ahead of the curve then, and they were catching teams out. Sheffield United, they weren't happy, moaned up that Norwich were this, that, the other, but for me that was a backhanded compliment, because Norwich basically caught them out a little bit. Middlesbrough as well, I'm sure they probably thought they'd roll Norwich over. It wasn't the case, but now it feels like there's been a regressive step, and they're now behind the curve, and teams know what to expect from a Norwich team, and it's for Norwich now to try and come up with something a little bit different because it's too predictable for me.
All the players in the squad basically need to step up at least
well,
one notch, don't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
and then that'll make things a lot easier. I mean, Nev Townsend says here, talking of upping their game, Vrancic needs to do big time. 2 or 3 20-yard passes during a game is not enough. Tom Izzard need 2 wide players playing at the same time, i.e. Murphy and Yannick. We get your last few sort of questions in. We'll be wrapping up in the next sort of 5 minutes. We did speak to Daniel about Josh Murphy, also a fair bit of length today, and similarly to the answer to Mario Vrancic, really, Daniel said about trust, and the different issue with Josh is that he's a young player.
Yeah.
He's 6 years younger than Mario Vrancic, so he is keen to stress that is the Norwich way now. They want to develop the young players. He knows that Wolves are able to spend whatever £16 million on some of the players that you were just mentioning.
Yeah.
But equally, he said that he admitted that he thought Josh was poor on Saturday, and it sounds like him and Josh have had that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that most people can see that Josh has the ability. We all know that. Yeah. And on Saturday, he was close to tearing Barnsley apart. Apart from the key moment, he kept sort of being indecisive or taking the wrong decision. If he can just turn that round a little bit, he's going to start really making an impact for Norwich, isn't he? Because he's already the top scorer.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really want to lump tricky young wingers all into the same category, but we have seen this process of almost growth and development previously with Redmond. He frustrated the life out of media and fans alike at times, but you knew when he was on it, then get the ball to him.
Yeah.
And his brother Jacob, he something a switch was flicked at the start of last season, probably that thumping goal he scored at Blackburn on the opening day, the surge of confidence he got from that, and then he never really looked back. Okay, he then went on and did have his dips. In terms of maybe the fatigue factor we're talking about with a little bit with Maddison, he went through spells where I think Alex Neil had to dip him out of the side again because he was a bit too much like treading sort of through treacle, wasn't it? Almost at times for Jacob, and Josh, you just feel he's on that same path kind of thing, but the frustration is that what he's about. I mean, go back to that Arsenal goal to do that on that stage, just nonchalantly chipping it over the keeper. That is the ability the guy has, and that's probably where a lot of frustration is with some elements of the fan base, that they know he's got that in him, they know he can do that, and they want to see it on a regular basis, because there's no doubt if you could get a consistent stream of performance out of that guy with his talent, he would decide games for Norwich in the Championship, as his brother was doing in his best spells.
Well, just to follow in nicely to that, Martin used to Josh Murphy's cupping hand to ear celebration. Does he have a point, or does he have to be a bit careful there? I mean, that follows on exactly from what you're saying there, isn't it? The fans know what he can do, but they are feeling frustrated, and Redmond felt it as well, and we've discussed that a bit before, is where the wingers do hear it a little bit just because they're physically closer to the crowd, they hear that criticism and those moans a little bit. But considering he is a club academy product, an FA Youth Cup winner and stuff, there isn't a great deal of patience there, but maybe that's just the nature of a winger's game.
Yeah, I mean it flows into the wider and we touched on it. Norwich haven't played well this season. They've ground out results in their most obdurate spells, but it's not clicking. It's not entertainment, is it? We only have to focus in on what's happening at Carrow Road at the minute, or what's not, to be more to the point. And there's just a general sense of frustration that that the team aren't expressing themselves as you feel they have the ability to do so. And Josh, none more so than that, because it feels like he's close to maybe hitting a vein of form that consistently score goals, create assists. But again, a little bit like with Vrancic, it's getting to the point where how long? I mean, he's had a good run of games. I don't know exactly how many starts he's had this season, but certainly the most he's ever had in a Norwich shirt, and he's not really making himself indispensable. I think once one or two players come back from injury, then But ultimately, he's retaining his place, because you wouldn't say Marley Watkins has put his hand up really.
No, he's certainly got some gears to go through, you would hope.
I mean, ultimately, it's very. If you're Daniel Farke, it's very straightforward. If you're putting 11 guys on the pitch and they're performing to their optimum, the results will follow, the performances will follow, and everything seems to flow seamlessly then. the reason we're having so many of these debates at the minute is because they're not playing well. The results aren't there. But the problem is, of course, that this is, I wrote about it today in the paper. This is now the post-Premier League era. They don't have a big bloated squad where they can dip players out and then park them for 2, 3, 4 months or whatever and bring lads in their place. The reality is, financial reality is now that these guys, it's basically you're going to have to go with these guys. And if you're a young player, you should, as Maddison has done, grasp the nettle, because it's a great opportunity. Because last season, the season before, these younger players they wouldn't have had as many opportunities. And really, the onus is on Josh. He needs to realise that this is a great opportunity. If he establishes himself, as Farker himself said today, if Josh Murphy was playing consistency with his talent, he'd have a Man City and a Liverpool wanting to put £25 million down for him. The fact he hasn't indicates that he still needs to develop his game, and quickly as well.
I just want to see a bit more determination from him, because I felt on Saturday he got into positions where it was then a case of, do I try and attack or do I cross, and he ended up doing nothing. So I think that's something he's got to overcome in his own head. Kevin Andrews, Murphy needs to do a lot more, brackets, so do several others. Jez, Arlo, Yannick, for me, is so frustrating to watch. All he has to do is take on his man and not run into the middle of the pitch. Simple. I mean, for me, the annoying thing with Yannick, he came on Saturday and he just tried to run through 2 players. I mean, the guy is a physical specimen, isn't he? Once he's got some grass in front of him to run into, there's very little stopping him. But they're just there's a bit lacking in terms of skill, as far as I'm concerned.
Sorry, Dave. I mean, ultimately, we're going through different players here, but it all comes back down to the same thing. Whether it's Rancic, whether it's Wiltshire, whether it's Josh Murphy, there isn't a level of consistency there in these guys' performance from game to game, from Saturday to Tuesday. And that's why basically Norwich are where they are, which is sort of listing a little bit in mid-table. Generally and individually, they need to find that level of consistency. Otherwise, it's going to be more of the same.
You mentioned the Premier League a minute ago, and they're only 3 points off the playoff at the moment, off the playoff places, at the moment. But Premier League feels a long way away at the moment, doesn't it? So we'll see. Thanks very much for all your comments. Plenty to get your teeth into at PinkUn.com already. Videos with Daniel Farker and James Maddison. We'll have another video later with all those comments about Mario Vrancic, which are very interesting, to keep an eye out for them. Myself, Paddy and Michael will hopefully be back on Facebook Live with you tomorrow afternoon as the coaches set off at Carrow Road, and then of course we'll be at the City Ground for the game against Forest. Thanks very much for that, Pad, and we will catch up with you all again tomorrow. Cheers.